Good morning. Happy Friday, folks. Today, we're talking about Dopamine Nation by Dr. Anna Lembke, which was one of the most eye-opening and I think applicable books in regards to just behavioral addiction and addiction in general. I am just en route to the gym. I have a session with Haley and then Husna, and then I have a bunch of video feedback to do. For that, it will be book review time before my 2 consultations today. So, hope you're having a great start to your Friday. It is time for this week's book breakdown. We're doing Dopamine Nation by Dr. Anna Lembke. So first, go away. Secondly, what is dopamine? It's a neurotransmitter in our brain that is related to dictating the quality of your life. Your feel-good baseline. When your dopamine is good, we are filled with joy, we are driven, we are eager to learn. When we drop below that feel-good baseline, we are typically riddled with anxiety, self-doubt, lacking motivation, and overall just discontent with life. A quick little introduction of the author herself, Anna Lembke. She is a professor of psychiatry at Stanford University School of Medicine and chief of the Stanford Addiction Medicine Dual Diagnosis Clinic. So something she talks a lot about in this book is the pleasure-pain balance. So I'm going to draw a little seesaw thing here. It's not going to be very good, but we're going to try and draw that here. The seesaw wants to stay level. After any deviation from neutrality, our brains will work very hard to restore homeostasis, which is essentially just balance. An example of this would be watching a bunch of trash TV. I use this example because we all do this in some way, shape, or form, whether it be YouTube, Prime, Netflix, whatever your trash TV drug of choice is, we all do this. I wanted to make it as relatable as possible. If we watch too much of that trash TV, there will be an imbalance of pain gremlins, as she describes in the book. We then need to take a break from that trash TV to restore balance. If we don't, and we continue watching trash TV day after day, week after week, we have now changed our hedonic set point, which we then need to continue using that same behavior to feel normal. If we don't, then we start to feel the universal symptoms of withdrawal, which can be anxiety, irritability, insomnia, and mental preoccupation with using, which is essentially just craving. So she talks about this as there's 2 long-term solutions for resetting our brain's pleasure centers. We can either pursue pain or we can abstain. The 3 ways she talks about pursuing pain in the book is 1, cold exposure. If you're not new to the channel, you've seen me doing the cold showers for the last 3-5 days or so. The reason I was doing that in the first place was because I had read this book quite a few months ago. So when you expose yourself to cold therapy, whether it be a cold plunge, cold shower, jumping outside the minus 30 weather, your dopamine levels are going to rise around 200%, which is pretty incredible because that's actually the same amount that it rises when you use cocaine. Now, the difference with cold exposure and cocaine is obviously quite significant, but the big thing is when you're pursuing a dopamine release that high, something like a drug, is you get this massive spike, but then you also get this massive drop-off. With something like cold exposure, you get this massive spike, and then it's a slow petering drop-off into the homeostasis side of things. Another way to go chasing pain is vigorous exercise. So there's a rise between 100 and 200% of gradual dopamine, which gets released when you do vigorous exercise of any kind. Exercise also naturally increases many of the neurotransmitters involved in positive mood regulation, such as dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, endocannabinoids, endorphins, and even more. In the words of Anna Lembke, so don't get butthurt when you hear this, not me saying this, exercise has more benefits in fighting depression than any pill on the market. that is only likely to target one, if not two, of the brain's positive mood regulators. She's not saying don't use those drugs. What she's saying is that if possible, do what you can to get in some form of exercise, not necessarily just vigorous exercise, but just exercise in general. The last way to pursue pain that she talks about in the book is via a form of intermittent fasting. Obviously, this is very loaded. I've talked about disordered eating and eating disorders already on the channel, so if this is something that affects you, then maybe this isn't a great option for you. But the reason that she brings it up as a way to pursue pain is that it gives you more appreciation for simple foods. So if you are someone that uses super high dopaminergic foods on a regular basis, whether it be highly processed, high sugar, high fat, when you do fast from food, it gives you much more appreciation for foods that are going to be much better for us in the long run, but they don't have the same release of dopamine when we eat them. When it comes to abstaining from dopamine, it's pretty straightforward. She recommends a minimum of a 30-day dopamine fast. What that might look like is whatever your behavior or substance of choice may be. Refraining from high sugar foods, THC in my case, social media, gambling, and other highly compulsive behaviors to reset your brain's pain-pleasure balance back to homeostasis. Depending on how long you've been using a substance or behavior, it may require more than 30 days. I find this really neat, but she has a really good acronym for dopamine, and it's actually the sort of map that she uses when she's helping a patient work through addiction, whether it be substance and or behavioral. D stands for data. When you collect data around addictions, it can be very eye-opening how bad a behavior actually is. It's really easy when we stay inside of our brain to contort reality and justify how either not bad an addiction actually is or why we deserve to use it in the first place. O stands for objective, meaning what was the objective you originally wanted to accomplish when you started using the behavior in the first place. An example from the book was a young female who originally started smoking weed to alleviate anxiety, which inadvertently worsened anxiety, and over time she then needed to smoke to feel normal. I can attest, this is something that I did. It wasn't necessarily for anxiety, it was just a way to disassociate, but if I then wasn't using, then I didn't feel normal. P stands for problems. Addictions enslave you by making sure you crave the substance or behavior to feel normal, such as the female in the book. It also erodes relationships with yourself and those around you. A stands for abstain, which I'm just going to kind of skip that one because she basically ties that in with I. M is what stands for mindfulness. Journal or reflect on the urge when the compulsive behavior arises. Curiosity is a delightful state when it's not attached with judgment of why the urge is there in the first place. Insight. So abstinence and insight go hand in hand because clarity happens after we have abstained from a substance or behavior, which allows us to realize insights that are simply not possible when the addiction is manipulating the way our brain thinks. N stands for next steps. So this is coming up and creating a plan to enjoy said behaviors in moderation moving forward, if possible, in air quotes. Lastly, the E stands for experiment. When you experiment with moderation, you may realize that the addiction is too powerful and you need to plan to resolve the addiction for good. This is where professional help via therapists, psychologists can be extremely helpful in getting to the root cause of your addiction in the first place. The underlying message with this book is the fact that we live in a world of abundance, and that's awesome. Truth be told, I'd much rather live in the world we live in today than in decades and centuries past. However, by having such an abundance of dopamine, of food, of drugs, of sex, of distraction, it has created a lot of problems in our own day and age. So it's important to recognize that they are valid problems, and if you are struggling with addiction, whether it be behavioral or substance related, that it's important that you seek help for them. I would highly recommend this book. Honestly, like I said, I think this is one of the most applicable books for our current generation in just the world we live in because there is such a massive surplus of dopamine everywhere we look, whether it be online gambling, online dating, social media, food delivery services, you name it, there is dopamine everywhere we look. Oftentimes, dopamine chases dopamine. Are you just watching trash TV? Or are you watching trash TV, indulging on some highly processed snacks, maybe smoking some weed with that, maybe having a glass of wine with that? All of these things that are just going to compound the amount of dopamine we end up taking in a day, which is then going to cause that seesaw effect to go even farther in the direction of pain. And over time, this can become a massive, massive problem. And that's where it's important. If you do experiment and you do try to moderate whatever substances or behaviors it is, you need to consider limiting it to 1 to 2 times a week, or even making rules where if you're going to use a substance or you're going to indulge in highly processed foods, try and do it in the presence of loved ones or friends, so at least you are strengthening social connections while indulging. Because when you indulge in behaviors like that in an isolated manner, the negative effects can couple quite quickly and it can become quite detrimental, and it's a spiral effect and it's quite hard to pull yourself out of that. So I hope you found this helpful. I would highly recommend this book. Definitely worth the read. Hopefully that wasn't too wordy, but I did want to get a big point across that there's a lot of good stuff and a lot of very applicable stuff in this book. So if you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. It's about 7 o'clock now, so I'm gonna wrap things up and just chillax on the couch for a little bit, try and get up early, do some programs tomorrow. If you found today's book breakdown Friday helpful or just insightful in any way, shape, or form, please let me know in the comments below. Do all those things for the algorithm. Like, comment, share, tell your friends. I would sincerely appreciate it. But regardless, if you have a request for books that you would like me to go over, I've got a decent little bookshelf over there, if you couldn't tell. But yeah, let me know. I'm just gonna chill with this sleepy, overworked dog. I hope you have a fantastic Friday. Stay safe, much love. I will see you on Sunday for a double vlog, because tomorrow, as mentioned, I'm going to the Oilers game. I'm gonna do something that people actually do. And yeah, and then Sunday you'll be seeing me eat some pizza. So it might be an uneventful next 2 days, but that's okay. I'm gonna consistently show up as always. Catch you on Sunday evening. Have a good night. Bye.